Welcome to Ham Nation, episode 537, January 4th, 2023. And hello, everybody. I'm Josh K6ARK. Welcome to Ham Nation. I'm coming to you from Southern California, facing down the barrel of the bomb cyclone. So I'll be under an inch of rain, they advertise. But we got a group of amazing hams from around the country with us tonight. Let's say hi to our hosts. Hello, hosts. How are you doing this evening?
Hey there.
Hi.
Hey, we're doing great.
So you guys are all like, you probably see in the news of everybody talking about all the rain we're getting. You're like, man, we've been through the ringer on the other side of the country, and California's worried about an inch of rain. Come on.
An inch of rain is actually a pretty big deal, depending on how quick
in like
you
a
get
day.
hit.
Yeah, in like a day. So it is actually going to be pretty impressive for California, but it just cracks me up. Everybody's facing negative 40, and we're worried about 1 inch of rain.
We get an inch of rain with the morning dew.
Yeah, right. I wiped that
The
off my
concrete's
car in the
been
morning.
sweating down here. It's horrible. Yeah.
Well, starting with Joe. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great. And, you know, we've only had 1.5 inches of snow the entire winter, and places that are even an hour or two away from me have gotten dumped on. And so I think our luck will run out in a couple of weeks. I looked at the models and I saw one that could get as high as 20 inches, but of course you don't know. So we're hoping that the snow bypasses us, but we do need the moisture here. I'm going to be showing some inexpensive tools and a 3D printed wrist paddle. And here's kind of a quick preview of it.
If Batman had a Morse paddle, that's the one he'd have.
That's going to be for like parks on the air and portable operation and so forth. And we'll talk about some kit builds we're doing, including at Hamcation. And all sorts of just little doodads and little things that I've learned over the last few weeks, and tools that have just come out on the market. And we'll show you all sorts of fun stuff.
Indeed. Always a very expensive show when you're on, Joe, for me personally, because I did buy those FM radio kits. Loved it.
Yeah.
I've been using it in my office. It's great.
It works.
I bought a couple of extra ones. I think I'm going to sit down with the kids and have them solder probably everything except the LC or the IC.
Yeah, those are fun kits, and it's shocking if you use a good set of headphones. The quality on those is wonderful.
It is true. Yeah, I have a pair of in-ear monitors that I use that are really, really nice for that. So yeah, well, thanks for the tip as always. They're really cheap on Amazon. I'll see if I'll grab the link and show them later in the show, or go to last show and you'll see them there. Gordo, how you doing?
We're fine. We're waiting for the bomb cyclone. 1 whole inch of rain. Oh, my gosh. But East Coast, 2 weeks ago, we warned you, and by golly, you stood up to it, made it through. Tonight, we're talking about automatic antenna tuners, and you being a manual antenna tuner.
Indeed. All right. Don, what's going on with you this evening?
Well, we finally thawed out and got Tyler home from New York City. He spent the Christmas vacation. The Christmas weekend in New York City, and unfortunately flew out there on Southwest.
No!
Flew back on JetBlue 2 days later. So we're fighting with that, trying to get a refund for him, and it got down to like 20 degrees, 18 degrees over Christmas, and my whole house filter in the pump house froze and broke. So I spent Christmas Day replacing the whole house filter so we could have water again. We were without water, well water, for 2 days here. So, but we've all thawed out, and it's been nice, and now we're dealing with some thunderstorms and occasional tornado warnings. So it's winter in the South, but everything is doing just fine. Have a nice treat tonight. Not only do we have, of course, the weekly Newsline headline report, but we have Dr. Tamitha Skov with us live tonight. So we're excited about that.
Very excited. Amanda, you're looking great this evening. How you doing?
Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and a great New Year. Safe. It's been a crazy end of the year, I think, just with celebrity-wise and everything else. Anyhow, and weather-wise. So anyhow, hopefully everybody survived, and I'm glad to see everyone on here in chat. And you know what, everybody? I have the easiest night in the world. All I'm doing is taking your questions. I don't have anything else I have to do. So I'm going to be chatting it up in the chat room, and I'm going to be handing questions to all of our wonderful guests tonight. So make sure you interact with me and tell me everything you need to know from these hosts and guests. So with that, I think we'll send it to Josh and Adam to wow us.
Yes, indeed. So Adam, we've got Adam K6ARK with us this evening. Adam has been on my channel many times. Friend of mine, went camping together, builds amazing antennas, but every time I've had him on the show, my live stream, Saturday live stream, it's mainly us like building one of your kits. And I thought it might be fun to like let's get into the mind of Adam a little bit, because you're quite an interesting guy when it comes to solving amateur radio problems. You don't just like you don't just think to yourself, boy, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this? You go, wait a second, I'm a ham radio operator. I can do this. And you've made a ton of kits, and you have Kit Builder in the lower third here, because I don't know of a better name to give you other than you're actually making the kits that other people build. And so I guess I'll start with, how do you come up with the ideas that you do with the kits? Like, what's your motivation? And then like kind of walk me through some of those thoughts you go through.
Yeah, well, this is a scary place up here, I have to say. But yeah, I would say my personality is that I have been an engineer my whole life. Since I was a little kid, I was always designing things and building things. I grew up on a 40-acre ranch with a fish pond, and I loved fishing. And I built and designed this fishing rod holder that would detect a bite, and then it had a spring-loaded hinge on the rod holder, and it would set the hook automatically for you. So there's an example of, one of those problems I saw even as a child that I solved through some kind of engineering design.
So this goes back to before you were a ham. You've always just had this kind of like doer/maker mentality.
Had the knack.
Yeah, the knack is the term, the joke from Dilbert, right? The Dilbert line, yeah. Well, so you've made many things, but the thing we probably know or have seen most of is your small BNC antenna kits that you have, right? And those are now branching into different connector types and more power and all that stuff. So when you sit down, let's start with that. When you sit down to like build up an antenna, it doesn't exist. It's only in your mind. Like what do you go through to take it from the thought into, paper and then into a physical thing?
Yeah, so I started my HF journey running QRP with an FT817, and I wanted a small kit that I could easily bring out portable up to mountaintops and things like that. And I bought, at the time, PAR end-feds, trail-friendly antenna that you may be familiar with. It's
LNR,
in a little, relatively small matchbox, and carried that around for many years. And when I bought that, I thought, there's no way I could ever build anything better than this, smaller than this, more compact than this. And, a few years later, I started tinkering around and learning to build antennas. And I had some of these BNC connectors. We'll get that to focus there. These BNC connectors for coax, these solderable ones with a little window on it. And I noticed, hey, these little FT50-43 toroids sit right on top of there. I wonder if I could turn that into an antenna matching unit. So I got the Dremel out and I did a little grinding on this little BNC connector. And you may remember the video. It's still up on YouTube. You can find it there, and you can still build the end-fed half-wave matching unit that way. It's a little harder than the kits, and that's why I designed the kits, to just make that easier. So I solved that initial problem with some existing gear and some tailoring and modification to that, and then shared that. And then a friend of mine, N7MCB, Matt, sent me an image one day and said, hey, you should consider using these PCB mount BNC connectors and designing a PCB for this. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea. So I took Matt's idea and I ran with it, and that's why his call sign is also in very fine print with all the other text on the PCB, because it was really his idea that kicked that off. So So yeah, that's the kit that you're sharing on the screen there. And the kit now makes that build much easier. It includes all the parts you need to build the antenna matching unit, some heat shrink tubing to protect it, and then the plastic tubing there is to build a small, what I call a compensation coil, or a small loading coil near the feed point to account for end effect and to make sure you get those higher bands tunable on that, say, a 40-meter end-fed half-wave, so it'll also work on 15 and maybe even 10 meters.
Yeah, so when you're like, okay, I want to, well, small, I think was one of your goals, which I think you nailed it on that one. So you sit down and you're like, hey, this toroid will fit, and I've got this BNC connector, and then you start thinking about the PCB and whatnot. So when you actually sit down, and maybe this is a tools question, kind of like your process, what software do you use or anything along those lines for actually building out the plan for an end-fed antenna in this case, because you are using a bit smaller toroid for that kit than you generally see in a lot of different end-feds, for example?
Sure. So for the PCB design, I use a software called Eagle that's made by Autodesk, and there is a free copy that you can download and use, and it has certain limits on size and number of components and things like that. And I started there. And then when I decided to start selling the kits, I did buy the commercial version, because that's a part of the requirement of the free version, is that you're not using it commercially. Mm-hmm. So I use that software for the design, but really a lot of it, testing for power capacity and just functionality, that's just through experimentation and prototyping, proving concepts, and then coming up with a final design that works.
Mm-hmm. Your antenna, as I mentioned, kind of there's a lot of videos on them, and you obviously use them a lot, and they're out on Amazon. I posted the link in the description for anybody that's interested, as well as on your website, which we've got linked. But you've also, I know you've always been doing 3D printing for a while now, but you've really kind of, I guess, kicked it into high gear recently, and you've started dipping into some other things for 3D printing. And I guess walk us through that a little bit too. What are your thoughts on 3D printing for ham radio? And then again, what do you're sitting down, you're thinking to yourself, this could be smaller or this could be better. And, take it from there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So for many years, I said, what's better than having a 3D printer? Having a friend with a 3D printer. And I relied on friends for any 3D printing needs that I had. And eventually I got to a point where these antenna winders that I really liked for portable operation were discontinued, and I just couldn't buy them anymore. And they were a small antenna winder that was kind of the perfect size, maybe a little bit on the small side, for a 40-meter end-fed half-wave with 26-gauge wire. So I wanted a 3D printer to be able to design and build my own. And that's when I came up with this design. This is kind of version 1.0 of the K6ARK antenna winder. I subsequently made a wireframe version of this that's ultralight, and those are for sale on Amazon. And this winder works pretty well. It's light, it's small. That's about 75 or 80 feet of wire on there, so you can see it fits pretty well. And that's a clip for a BNC connector. So the BNC will clip right in there for storage.
And that's your whole. So by the way, I mean, you may not have one available at the moment, but that's basically the size of the antenna. So you wrap that whole thing up, and then the BNC slaps on it, and your transformer's right on the end of that BNC, which makes it pretty nice. Mike, thank you for the super chat. Oh, there you go. He's got one. Of course he does. So that's the whole antenna right there, what he's sized down for doing his Summits on the Air work.
So that was version 1.0, and I used that for many years, the other one. And this is version 2.0. One of the things I learned from version 1.0 was that the angle of the hooks for the wire made it such that it was a little harder to unwind the wire, and it made the wire kind of bulge out a little bit on the bottom. And on these new winders, I adjusted the angle of these legs here to make the wire come off the winder more easily. And I also sort of deepened the plastic here so the wire would wind more straight and not bulge, and just make the whole thing pack a bit smaller. So these winders are all shared on my printables page, which I saw that you linked in a pinned comment there. So if you have a printer, go check those out. They're great winders. There's a wireframe version that I need to post up there on printables, but that'll be up there soon. The winders were kind of the starting point of the 3D printing.
Noticing just looking at your printables page, you've got your wire winder, you have a single lever Morse key, that microphone for the True SDX, which I know a lot of people were asking for a solution to that because there really isn't a lot of them on the market, right? They try to have that internal one, but the link is in the video description and in the chat as well. But you kind of just, I guess, you look at something. This is you. I'm pretending to be you here, and you go,
Yep.
I just don't like this, or this could be better, and you're like, I'm just gonna go do it. Like your modular case for the True SDX, right? This is you've
Right.
got that thing way smaller than it is stock, and it's separatable, right? So you have different band settings with
Yeah,
that potentially.
So this is actually the same size as the stock one for the modular case, but they came out with these high band and classic band boards for the True SDX. The board in the RF board in these can handle 5 bands, and to change it, you have to undo all these screws, 8 different screws, pull the boards apart, take it out, and swap it. And I said, there's a better way. So you can see the seam along here, and I brought this into Autodesk Fusion, another Autodesk software application that I use for all my 3D design. And I cut it up and I added some parts to it, including these little hooks that you see right here that fit into sort of a female slot on that side. And what you end up with is a way to have your main board as a separate unit here, and then print multiple of these bottom cases for our different RF boards. And on some of them, I didn't do it on this one, but I even printed into the back panel which band set of bands it is. So yeah, that was kind of a fun project with the True SDX, which is a really popular little, it's somewhat compromised, but very fun to use and very cheap QRP sideband and CW radio that's available now.
As somebody who tinkers often, we're talking about tools today, and Joe's going to come up with some really cool, tool picks that he's found recently. What are some of your kind of go-to tools or tools you'd recommend for people that are going to do this kind of stuff and potentially build their own antennas and all that?
Yeah, I've got the tools I was going to grab are in a box down on the floor there, but
it's okay.
a set of vernier calipers are essential for doing your 3D design. So here's another one I did recently. This is a link, a fully disconnectable link, and this Kyle AA0Z sent me these 4mm banana plugs. You can see the male banana plug there. And what he wanted was a link that could be electrically and physically or mechanically connected.
Yeah.
So it's, robust there, doesn't pull apart, or mechanically disconnected completely if you want to abandon that extra 35 or 66 feet of wire, and can be mechanically connected but not
so cool.
Electrically connected.
Yeah.
So it's got a few orientations here that you can connect this in. And this idea came from a neighbor of mine, WB6EDK, Brooks. And I kind of took the idea again and ran with it and totally redesigned his general concept for this, and came up with that version. And I shrunk it down for the 2mm banana plugs as well. See if we get that to focus.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so a
that's
much
even smaller.
Whoa. Much smaller version for portable antennas. So
right on.
So yeah, that's the calipers are one tool, and I needed those really to carefully measure the banana plugs and get the dimensions of the unit just right to match the parts that it needed to mate with. Another really essential tool, obviously, for antenna design is a good antenna analyzer. And I like to use a rig expert when I'm tuning an antenna, but really one of the most useful tools is just a nano VNA, and being able to see that Smith chart once you kind of learn what it's telling you is a really useful tool as well.
That's a good one too, because those are pretty inexpensive. You can still
They are,
pick up
for
the
sure.
base model small screen one for like $50 or something, I believe, which is
Yep.
pretty fantastic. All right. Well, Adam, there's a couple of questions here, and I think I queued up some stuff to answer some of them. Lee said 5 watts ? And I think we can just answer that by going back to Amazon, and you can talk over this. But no, right?
Yeah.
You got more than that.
Well, it depends. The smallest unit with the FT50-43 toroid, that little guy will handle 5 watt CW and 10 watt sideband pretty easily. There's a slightly larger version that'll handle 20 watts pretty easily of even CW. It's got a generally FT82 size toroid nested around the outside of the FT50. And then finally, the 100 watt version, the big papa with the kind of special toroid in there that's about 3 times the mass of a FT140-43 and about twice the height and the same diameter.
What do you run that one on? Obviously, it's 100 watts, so pretty much anything. But
I seldom run an end-fed half wave when I'm running 100 watts. I typically like to run a dipole, a linked dipole. I like to get the radiating part of the antenna a bit higher on those higher bands, and I don't like to run coax with an end-fed half wave. But what I do use this big matching unit for is for a bobtail curtain antenna, my big wire gain antenna when I'm trying to work DX. And with that antenna and with that matching unit, I was able to work 3 European summit-to-summit contacts from Southern California. So guys with QRP stations on summits in Europe on CW about a month and a half ago.
fantastic. All right, Amanda, do you have any questions in there?
I did. I got one, and I can't remember who sent it, but it says, Adam, do you have a chart or formula to determine the value of capacitor use for a given toroid inductor?
Oh,
Good question. So I assume you're referring to like an end-fed half-wave matching unit, and that capacitor that goes into that matching unit helps give you a better match and a little more efficiency on the higher bands, like 15 meters and up, generally speaking. And no, I don't have a specific value. It generally ranges between 100 and 200 picofarads. I typically just go with a 100 picofarad capacitor, and that works pretty well. It's not a super sensitive or precise value, and it's not super critical to the build.
Okay. And just other things I'm seeing here. Can't help but notice that 2.0 is shorter with a winky face. Okay.
You're talking about your winder, I think, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, you get more wire on those legs, right? Kind of with the 2.0
do.
versus the 1, I think. Once the wire starts
Yeah.
stacking up on you, it gets all bunched, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's a little more room for it on the 2.0. And I want to show, I know we're running short on time for myself, but I wanted to show a couple other things real quick from the 3D printing world.
Show it.
This here, if I can get it to focus. Focus.
There it is.
There we go. So this is a new Morse code paddle that I designed. You guys may have been familiar with the Pico paddle knockoff that I designed.
Yep.
And that one is very difficult to print. It requires very tight tolerances, so I haven't shared that design. But I came up with this one, which has bigger levers, is easier to use. It has adjustable lever tension and adjustable throw. And of all the 3D printed paddles I've used, this one works probably the best. It has very little flex in the levers, which is kind of a big drawback to a lot of the paddles. And the parts to make these cost about $2. You need 4 M3x3 or M3x4 set screws. You need the little headphone jack that goes in the back, and you need an M3x4 machine screw, and that's it. The hinges in this are the plastic in there that's specifically designed as a compliant mechanism to flex easily, and I encourage you to try it out. It's on that printables page. Print it in PETG, buy a few dollars worth of hardware, and these paddles are fantastic.
Indeed. PETG. I like that filament type. That's one of my favorites.
One more question was, what gauge wire are those antennas?
Yeah, so for portable antennas, I almost always use PolyStealth 26 gauge from Davis RF or AmateurRadioSupplies.com. They make great wire. That's not what I have on these winders. This is cheaper stuff, but if you want some great portable wire, that's actually what Pactena uses as well, I think, and it's fantastic stuff. You can easily put up to 100 watts through it, probably a little bit more.
Nice.
Is that paddle available on the printables as well?
It is indeed, yeah. And I also made a single lever version of this paddle for those that do like a single lever paddle. And there's also a version that has slightly larger levers and a leg strap. That's what this is. This is a plate for a leg strap, and you put an elastic band on it, and that shows you the slightly larger levers.
I'll be showing one that was recently put out through the 4-State group.
Very cool.
That goes on my wrist. So
yeah,
very good.
Awesome.
All right, Adam, thanks for being on Ham Nation this week. We appreciate you. And
my pleasure.
Have fun with your next meeting. Like most hams, we all got meetings on the weekdays, right? So you're hopping out of here to do other things. So thanks for being on, Adam. Appreciate you.
Thank you all.
I definitely have to write about his antennas.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Joe. Check it out.
A good other announcement, if you're going to be at Dayton, I strongly encourage you to consider attending the 4 Days in May conference. QRP Archie puts on 4 days in May in conjunction with Hamvention, and they have some great presenters, including myself again this year. I'm going to be talking in more detail about portable antennas, including some of my designs and what I recommend for QRP portable operations.
Fantastic.
All right, fantastic. Come back sometime soon, Adam. We can't wait to have you to show us
My pleasure.
some more projects.
He'll have a bunch by then, I assume. So, all right, Adam, we'll talk to you later. Gordo, we're ready for you. Let's go to those short shots.
All right. Well, I'm really turned on with all that great workmanship that Adam has brought us. This Saturday, Ham Radio University on Long Island is having their 24th annual, but it won't be on Long Island. It'll be all over the world in that look up Ham Radio University, HRU 2023, this Saturday, and you'll learn all about how they're going to do it virtually. And I've been to HRU several times in person, and they do a great job. And speaking of the Yaesu FT817 or the FT818 bulletin, the FT818s are almost out of parts. So if you're thinking about it, you better go quick to get one. Same thing with the Yaesu FTM400 XTR. That's a great transceiver. That one also running out of parts, only a couple hundred left throughout the country. So those two products from Yaesu, parts are getting hard to get more brought up and made up and brought over. And a question again, my VHF propagation book comes from CQ magazine. It may be at the dealer level, but it's CQ. Now, down at the dealer level, let's talk automatic and manual antenna tuners. And this coming, 2 weeks away, the big Quartz Fest ham radio get-together in Quartzsite, Arizona, one of the big things that Don usually does, the other Don, we got a lot of Dons out here, is we show off antenna tuners. Now, these that you see are remote tuners. And before we even promote tuners, we always say, if you tune the antenna like it should be tuned, you wouldn't need a tuner. But yes, in-fed and random dipoles and so on, yeah, they will need a tuner. These are automatic tuners. They're in the $300 to $400 area. And probably the big seller, although it's the most expensive, USA made is the SGC 230. This is called a reactance-fed tuner, which means that the output is single wire that can load up nearly everything, but it does require a good ground for that to work. We see a lot of these automatic tuners aboard power boats and sailboats, as well as remote operation. But remember, when the tuner is tuned up and holding those relays, it's drawing a little bit of current, and we're going to show you a way that LDG has figured out a way to draw zero current with their Z100A. But this tuner, if ever you see one at a swap mate, it's a keeper, and a lot of microprocessor action there to click in if your antenna is too short, those coils that you see on the bottom, or if your antenna's a little too long, the capacitors that you see in a row. This tuner tunes up in about 2 seconds and can tune literally anything. It's a marvelous and water-resistant antenna tuner. Icom America also makes the AH2, AH3, AH4 tuners. And unlike the SGC that senses when it's got RF, the Icom will actually command the radio, the matching Icom, to send a low power signal for the tuner to tune, and then will cause that signal to stop so that the tuner is all tuned up. And that is the 4-conductor cable that you see here that's necessary for the Icom AH4 tuners. But the beauty of the AH4 is it's not real expensive. It is a reactance-fed tuner, which means it will tune up literally anything. And it is not submersible, but by golly, I've seen a lot of them left out in the rain, and they work well. So when we think about this kind of tuner, we're always thinking that's a high voltage output. Coax cable goes to the tuner, and then all the magic occurs within the tuner, and the output comes off of this, the big white insulator, and the conductor output post. And the automatic tuners keep the RF and any stray RF up in the antenna away from your radio with nothing coming back down the coax, only good stuff going up the inner conductor of the coax. LDG, made in America, and LDG is a real family operation. They've got a lot of big kilowatt tuners and a host of other great products. But the real sleeper, and it's been around for several years, is the LDG Z100A. And this is a tuned L network, which means that, yep, you do need a good ground on it, but it's coax to the radio and coax to the antenna. And that means that the tuner is right there at your rig where you push a button or you let the rig automatically tune up. It's not expensive. It has good size coils that you see there on the right side for XBL inductance to make an antenna look longer to the tuner, and capacitors to make a long antenna look a little bit shorter to the tuner. But remember, the tuner, while it's fooling the radio that this is a great match, everything's wonderful, you could have a high SWR, and that is coming back down right in your noggin. So again, we always encourage you, build an antenna that is what we call balanced, like a dipole antenna or a loop, and don't have high SWR coming down the coax, although this tuner can very well tune up a high SWR. Well, new from Comet, and Comet you look up as NCG Company, is their manual CAT 300 1.8 to 60 megahertz tuner. This was brought in to get around some of the areas that the good working MFJ tuners, the 949, had it for many years. And this one is a favorite among a lot of our Coast Guard personnel, Coast Guard Auxiliary, because when you set it to, let's say, the 4 megahertz band, some of the other tuners wouldn't tune above about 4.0. This will tune throughout 1.8 all the way up to the 10-meter band without missing a beat. You put it to the closest band you're going to be operating on. Let's say you want to operate on the 60-meter band, 5 megahertz. Try it on the 3.5, but I found out 5 tunes in quite nicely. The coil is larger on the inside, and the two capacitors for X sub C, left and right hand knobs that you see there, they're also very quality and slightly larger. And the Comet tuner does a fine job. And again, always tune up without transmitting. Turn up your volume, rotate the band selector on receive for where you hear the noise instantly pick up, meaning you're close. Then quickly rotate RX tune, make that TR tune, and X tune, that's on the right. And when you peak the noise, then you can go ahead, go to low power AM and get a little bit of power and watch the twin needles. And that's a wonderful SWR meter that you see there. Its only downside on the SWR meter is when it is backlit, the back turns black and the needles are black. So you got to take a little closer look to see what's going on. But you see, I've got it on 7 megahertz and the rig below it is on the 60 meter band at 5, and it tunes up quite nicely. So
Happy
automatic
holidays.
tuners. Automatic tuners are a great way to get a signal on the air. And the LDG tuner that you see here is compact. And the LDG tuner, I believe, comes with 1 cable kit. So you need to be sure and tell them, is it going to a Kenwood, a Yaesu, an Icom, and a Linko, or RT, or whose ever radio it's going to, because they've got a host of all the different wire kits. And I believe one can come with the unit. I'm pretty sure that is a nominal charge, but you need that so that the unit's tune button tunes. But if you've got a rig that you're not going to be attaching to the interface, you can still tune it off the little tune knob here. So I'm always impressed when I see good old Made in the USA and LDG and others come up with great products. But again, the best tuner is to go out there and do your work and tune the antenna, and then you'll be rolling when you add a little bit of what we call the trimmer. If your HF radio already has a built-in tuner, probably this is not going to change much, so stick with that radio with its built-in tuner. But if you're looking for something where you're going to tower mount it, get that RF up and away, then you may want to go to some of the more expensive LDG tuners or to the SGC or the MFJ or some of those remote tuners that are weatherproof and keep things going. Finally, on the LDG, the beauty of this, if you're running like an Icom 705 up on a mountaintop, is once it's tuned, the relays are self-latching, which means you can remove any current, remove the 12 volts, and this tuner will hold that tune setting on that frequency without any power at all. So for those of you that are mountaintopping and QRP, that's a great way to go. Automatic latching relays on the LDG little portable tuner. In fact, talking about mountaintopping, let's take a look and see what Icom America is doing right now with their great rigs.
Happy holidays from Icom. Spice up your ham shack this season with one of Icom's popular handhelds, mobiles, or base stations. These radios are perfect for working your favorite bands while staying inside or venturing out this winter. It's the most wonderful time of the year to give the gift of Icom. The IC705 is the perfect sidekick and QRP companion. Base station features and functionalities at the tips of your fingers in a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in just under 2 pounds with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. 4.3-inch color touchscreen with live band scope and waterfall. 5 watts with the included BP272 battery, or 10 watts with 13.8 volt external DC. Single sideband CW, AM, FM, as well as full D-Star functions. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the optional backpack LC192. The ID52A is a VHF-UHF dual band with D-Star and FM dual mode functions and is the first handheld radio with a full-color 2.3-inch waterfall display. This radio supports conventional FM communications and D-Star simplex, repeater, regional, and worldwide calls over the D-Star Internet Gateway. Create your own band opening with the IC9700. This radio brings direct sampling to the UHF-VHF weak signal world. The IC7300 is a high-performance HF transceiver with a compact design that will far exceed your expectations. RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and SD memory card slot. The real ham fun starts here. Happy holidays from Icom America, and visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on Icom radios.
And we again thank Icom for sponsoring Ham Nation. We appreciate you. Thanks so much. Reminder, every month they give away a radio and swag packs every episode that Ham Nation goes live. So that's twice a month they give away 3 swag packs per episode. So if you want to get in on that giveaway, click on the link in the description for this video and click the Enter Now button. You provide a little bit of information, and the swag packs usually include like t-shirts, hats, some other fun stuff as well. But everybody who wins goes into a pool that they pick at the end of the month to win whichever radio. Now, haven't updated the website for this month yet, but I'm sure next time that Ham Nation is live, there'll be an update, and we'll be telling you about who's winning the swag prizes. All right, I get to throw it to Dawn, and we've got a live Tamitha Skov update. Very excited about this. I know you guys have been waiting to hear Tamitha for a while, so Dawn, take it away.
All right. First off, welcome, Dr. T. It is so nice to have you with us tonight, live. Such a treat. Let's go ahead and get into what's going on with the sun before we get into Amateur Radio Newsline and kind of tell us how your Christmas and New Year's holidays went.
We're flipping it up, huh? I'm
a little
not
bit
used to
tonight.
this. Well, believe it or not, I think if anyone's been on the bands today, especially sometime this afternoon through early this evening, you might have noticed that things were great. And yet, wasn't there a solar storm hitting? And the answer to that is actually yes. There's actually a solar storm hitting right now. So why are the bands so good? Well, the reason why is because about halfway through the storm, all the orientation of the magnetic field flipped northward, which means basically all the aurora shut off and everything went quiet, and suddenly we have all this stabilizing influence on the upper atmosphere. So the ionosphere has been really good for radio propagation. So I was noticing on my geochron earlier that there has been a ton of propagation today, on all sorts of different radio bands. FT8 was going like crazy. So hopefully everybody's been enjoying that. It's the conditions are beginning to kind of calm down now because the solar storm is once again, the magnetic field is changing just a smidge. And so maybe the conditions aren't quite as good as they had been, but they still should be pretty good. And that should continue for a little while, really until we get the influence of what I'll show you here in just a sec. We have a coronal hole. I'll stand on this side right here. So if you can see this coronal hole right here, this coronal hole is just now beginning to rotate into the Earth's strike zone right now. You see it kind of disappears a little bit as it begins to rotate to the sun's west limb. And that's going to be sending us some fast solar wind. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of smushing, the fast solar wind is kind of slamming into the back end of that big solar storm that's still kind of slowing everything up right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if things kind of flipped off, like if you're having great propagation, especially on Earth's night side, and then things just get really wonky, like all of a sudden. Don't check your rig. Just know we have a lot of stuff going on in the solar wind right now. And in fact, that is also going to change. We've had a lot of changes over just the last 24 to 48 hours. As a matter of fact, what I'll do here is I'll show you. I have my special colors up today. I have to use this particular. If anyone's gone to the SDO website on NASA right now, for some reason they always have a glitch right around the beginning of the year. I don't know if it's a Y2K thing that they just never decided to completely fix. They just hit the reset button. But every year at the beginning of the year, they always have a little bit of a glitch. So some of the data is out on their automated system. So I'm using a slightly different method to show you the sun today, in case you're familiar with how I normally show it. So you'll have to bear with me a bit. But one of the things that's going to be changing here in the next few days is due to this region right here. I'll show you this region from stereo's view because it's not quite rotated into Earth view. This region is probably going to be named region 3182, and wham, you probably saw that right there where things started changing. That was a very large solar storm that was launched. It's not Earth directed. This was launched on, I'm sorry, I'm blocking the time, but you'll see it when it resets. Here, you'll see it on the 3rd. You'll watch, boom, right there. See that? Oh my goodness, this was a very large solar storm, and stereo also saw a very large solar flare along with it, with a big radio burst as well. And this region, it definitely looks like it's still a very large flare player. It's just beginning to kind of show itself a little bit as it rotates, as it kind of rises in the east, on the east limb of the sun. We're beginning to see a little bit about it, and I do think that it's still going to be reasonably nasty. The nice thing is that a region like this continues to make that solar flux rise. The bad thing is that you're going to start hearing a lot more noise on the bands, and we might start getting into serious radio blackout territory again if this region continues to be unstable or if it grows again. Don't know if it's going to send us any more solar storms, but we have about a week for it to rotate into essentially the Earth strike zone to know if it's going to launch any storms that would hit Earth. So you've got a little bit about a week respite until this thing becomes a problem when it comes to big solar storms. But radio blackouts could definitely be an issue here starting in about maybe the next 24 hours or so. Well, we shall see. Meanwhile, on top of that, if you notice this region here, this is region 3179. You see this kind of weird stuff right here. This was a filament launch. As a matter of fact, if I change colors for you, you can probably see it a little bit better. I see this ugly, I don't know if that looks blasted. It looks blasted out on my screen. Perhaps it is on yours too, but you can see it kind of leaves. There's something that goes whoosh. That was a filament launch that might be Earth directed. It's kind of hard to tell. If so, we should get another bump up in solar storm activity around the 9th. So if you're paying attention, we've got a solar storm that's hitting now. Then following that, right around the 6th and 7th, maybe 8th, we should get some fast solar wind. It'll kind of give us some trouble. And then following that, there might be impact from this. So expect the bands, especially on Earth's night side, to be a little bit dicey. 6 meters, 10 meters, that should look pretty good. Expect auroral propagation will be something that you can definitely play with over the rest of this week. Before things begin to calm down. So there's a lot of good stuff both on the day side of Earth and the night side of Earth. Not good stuff on the day side, that's more radio blackout stuff, but the night side of Earth might give you some real fun and unusual stuff to do with radio propagation. Now, what I will also show, let me show you the stereo. This is stereo's view, and we're looking at the sun just a little bit from the side. Stereo's view is almost the same as ours now, but it was just a little bit east compared to where we are. So if I start this, as a matter of fact, I'm probably, let me, yeah, we'll see. It'll reset here. So what you'll see if you watch this side, you'll see very, very quickly when it resets. Oh, there we go, ready. Boom, right there. See that? That was the flare. So if you can see, there was a big flare from this region. Like I said, this region has not rotated into Earth view yet. It's just beginning to. This region also gave us a big solar storm launch back on the 2nd. So could it be a big solar storm producer? Yes. Could it be a big solar flare producer, including an X-class flares? Yes. R1 radio blackouts? Yes, absolutely. R2, R3? Maybe. But likely just a lot of noise on the bands, and we shall see whether or not it's going to end up staying a bad actor. But if it does, as it rotates on into Earth's view, it's going to be a bad actor for probably the entire 2-week passage it takes to rotate all the way across the disk. So be aware of that. We also have more active regions. This one isn't such a big deal, but this is once again a nice solar flux producer. So we'll maintain decent radio propagation on Earth's day side for a lot of the bands, just to have to deal with a lot of radio noise. Okay, one of the things we also are noticing, let me see if I can stop this. This was what I wanted to show you was, you can see the big, let me stand on this side. So this is the coronagraph. Sorry?
No, I said, oh, wow, we just saw it pop. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, boom,
There it
right
is.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
so when that big region, which like I said will be likely named region 3182, that caused this big monster solar storm. This is not Earth directed. So if you happen to be someone who watches a lot of space weather YouTube channels and they are saying this is a kill shot, don't believe them. It's just, once again, people getting super excited about something that's not going to hit Earth. Is this a big solar storm? Yes. Is it a big sign that solar cycle 25 is continuing to ramp up? Yes. But don't worry, it's not a kill shot, and it's not even going to hit Earth at all. We don't have anything like that happening toward Earth at all. But I will show you that this region, this is helioseismology, and this is the only way right now that we're able to look at the far side of the sun. Anything that you see in gray are actual views in Earth view. So as the sun continues to rotate, there are certain active regions that we can actually see in Earth view. And then when we go to helioseismology, whoops, that's the gold stuff that you see here. All of the dark regions are regions that are on the far side of the sun that we're getting by basically kind of checking how the sun is quaking, basically sun quakes. And depending upon how the sun quakes, that then dictates what we can actually see. And so back on the middle of December, we had regions 31, 62, and 63 in this region here. And if you notice, they rotated off of the sun's west limb and then onto the sun's far side. Well, believe it or not, that region, and they did have some big flares back a month ago, that region, as you can see, is actually grown through the sun's far side. And so when it actually appears, which will happen, it's beginning to happen now, this is a very robust region. So this is why I'm saying that we will definitely have it the entire time that it rotates across the sun's disk here over the next 2 weeks. So just get ready for radio blackouts to be back with us. As for X-ray flux and solar flux, hopefully you guys, maybe some of you recognize this. This is our what we call our M-flare threat meter. It's basically the X-ray flux, and we're sitting with the X-ray flux right at the seafloor right now. And this is definitely guaranteeing that we are going to be seeing solar flux in the triple digits. We're about 150 right now, and will continue to be so. This cute little C-class flare, this little tiny little hump here, this was when that big solar flare launched on the sun's far side. It was bright enough that we actually saw it above the sun's limb, and it registered a C-class flare. So that tells you how strong that flare was, that we actually saw it Earth side, even though it was really kind of hidden behind the sun's limb. Meanwhile, we are still getting other solar flares. Region 3179 is kind of giving us a small pop here, which was a near M-class flare. So there are a few other big flare players on the Earth-facing disk. It's just that region 3182 is going to probably command all our attention. Nonetheless, just be aware of these conditions that we've been having pretty much over the last couple of weeks will definitely maintain and likely get more intense over the next couple weeks here. Here's showing some the solar storm conditions. Over the past 10 days or so, I don't know if you guys are recognizing that the Space Weather Prediction Center and others, they don't color, sadly, they don't color storm time KP as red anymore. They like to keep it as yellow, which is great maybe for power grids and whatnot, but not so fun for us because we actually like to know when KP actually hits 5 and above. So we've actually been going since about the Christmas time. We've been going on and off kind of with solar storms hitting Earth. Some of these have been pockets of fast solar wind, at least most of them have been. Some of them have been just from like mini solar storms. Here is the latest mini solar storm to hit us here. The only reason why we actually bumped up to storm levels was because we actually did have some southward field. But as you can see, as quickly as the field went northward, that's when this turned off. That's when it goes right back down to green and now down to 0. This is the reason why amateur radio the bands are so nice right now, is because really when the solar wind magnetic field goes northward, it really has a stabilizing influence on the upper atmosphere and really smooths out those layers and makes radio skywave propagation really do very well. So enjoy it while you have it, because it's probably not going to last all that much longer. Now, flipping to our 5-day outlooks, these are modified a little bit It's kind of hard to tell right now exactly when the fast solar wind is going to kick in. But NOAA, because we do have that solar storm right now, and because the magnetic field is still very strong, even though it's northward, it could flip southward and things could get turbulent here very quickly. So high latitudes, NOAA is expecting minor storm conditions, but we do have up to about a 60% chance of a major storm over the next day or so, with things kind of settling down at high latitudes. Not a lot, because we do have the fast wind and then possibly a solar storm after that. We'll just have to see. But as we move into the January 9th, by then things should have settled down at high latitudes. Mid latitudes, we're only looking at active conditions, but we do have a small chance of minor storm conditions at mid latitudes. Probably not all that big a deal, mainly because we think that the solar wind field is probably going to continue to stay northward, and so we're probably not going to get a lot of aurora down south, or down into mid latitudes. But it's still possible, and auroral propagation is definitely possible easily through the 7th when you come down to mid latitudes. Oops, and then that's right, I go to this one. Regarding our solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, again, region 3177 right now and 79, those seem to be the ones that are popping, but region 3182 is probably going to be numbered maybe tomorrow or Friday at the latest. I have it here on Friday. I do believe that's going to be the designation of the big region that's going to be rotating into Earth view. When that happens, we may see a rise in M-class and even X-class flare risk. Right now, NOAA has it at 30%, but it likely will rise just a little bit, because as we're looking at that region rotating into view, it's looking pretty nasty, to be totally honest. I also think the solar flux is going to rise probably into the 160s, but again, we'll have to see more of that region rotating into view. And also because we do have a couple big flare players leaving the west limb of the sun and rotating to the sun's far side, we also have a very small risk of a radiation storm, an S1 radiation storm. Is it likely to happen? No, but if you happen to be a frequent flyer or know someone who is, or a high-risk passenger, just let them know to stay vigilant. If they don't have to fly, then, it might be a good idea to just kind of lay low for a couple days, but it's really not that big a risk. Everything else should be pretty much in the clear. And that is essentially all I have to say. The only other thing I can say really quickly, in case you are a frequent flyer, is, believe it or not, you may not have no idea that this actually happens, but ICAO actually does space weather advisories for aviation. So for those of you, this is a real actual aviation space weather advisory. I am just happy as can be that we are finally getting things. Look at space weather event, ionospheric disturbance. See this up here? Ionospheric disturbance in progress. Impact on GNSS performance, possibly leading to loss of GNSS signals and or degradation of timing and positioning performance. Yes, space weather is finally being taken seriously. So I just had to brag a little.
That is so
We've
good.
been working very hard on that for quite some time.
See, this is why I like having you on here live, because we get a level of detail that we don't get with the short reports that we have to do, that we typically do. So having you on here live is so, we get so much more out of it. And when you do live streams as well, occasionally, don't you? Still on YouTube? When is your next one? Because if I'm telling you guys, if you haven't been attended one of Tamitha's live streams on online, this is the kind of stuff you get, but into greater detail. So when are you doing the next one?
A live stream. I've actually been asked to do a live stream. I was going to do one today, but you guys grabbed me and said, "Will you do one here?" So you guys
here we are doing it. Yeah. Here we are doing it. That is so cool. SpaceWeatherWoman.com, and of course at Tamitha Skov on Twitter, and you're on Facebook, and you're also on YouTube. And I know we have some questions from the gathering throng. So
we do.
Amanda, what are our questions from the chat room?
Well, Dr. T, I think we have to address the elephant in the room that you freaked everybody out. What is the kill shot, and are we going to die from it?
And what also
electronics will.
On that, what would have happened had that been? Would that have been another Carrington event?
Great question, Don.
Well, you guys are going to make me hunt here for a sec. Let me show you. I'll show you what it looks like.
You're the doctor.
Maybe I can do it here. Hold on. Yeah,
we appreciate you so much. We really do.
We really do.
We appreciate the live Googling. I'm glad that I'm not the only one that does that during the show.
Oh, no. No, I'm what I'm pulling up is actually a model run of that
Oh, very cool.
yeah, of that event. I wasn't going to show it. Let me see. Hang, give me one more sec. I think it's on the 3rd when they did it. So if you can give me one more second to pull up the right one.
No,
So,
we got all night.
Yeah, there we go. We've got all night, he says. No, we don't. You know how dangerous that is with me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I was about to say, you should know me by now, Don. Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right, let me make sure this is in the frame. Okay, and I'll pull it
Yep,
over this way
that's
just
good.
a smidge. All right, so what you're looking at, for those of you who are not super familiar with the Enlil runs, this is NASA's version of a solar storm prediction model. Both NASA and NOAA run a version of this model. They're slightly different. This is NASA's version of the model, and here you're looking down. If I get my hand in the right place, you're looking down at the sun from at the North Pole, and then Earth is the yellow dot right here. Ding dong, that's Earth. Okay, so what you're looking down at is basically what we call the ecliptic plane. And yes, it looks like a bunch of pinwheels going, and the pinwheels are because the sun is like a rotating lawn sprinkler, and instead of sprinkling water, it's sprinkling solar wind. So that's what you're getting, that kind of pinwheel kind of look, because the sun is rotating around in circles this way. So when that solar storm launched, you can imagine, so you can see this big, yellow banana in a sense, or red banana in this case. That is the solar storm being launched from that region that's going to rotate into Earth view. It's quite fast. And it's not Carrington class, but it sure ain't small, and it's quite quick. So it will be very interesting. The nice thing is that if you notice, I'm standing in the way, but if you notice, there's Parker Solar Probe. That's what this square, this Parker SP means. Parker Solar Probe, if you notice, is right here.
Oh, yeah.
Which is almost dead,
Dead center, yeah.
Dead center, right, of getting hit by this. And it's going to be hit within the next day or two. So very, very soon, we're going to be able to see whether or not this was how close to a Carrington class event this was. And sadly, I don't think that the WSPR imager is designed it's not quite designed the same as, for instance, the Alaska, the chronograph I just showed you, but that imager should be hopefully can get an idea. Well, actually, I doubt it, because now that I look at it, Parker Solar Probe is moving away, so it wasn't really staring at the sun. Luckily, even though you can't see it, it will be past. The CME is going to pass right over the spacecraft. So all the what we call the in situ measurements, all of the magnetic field strength and the speed and all of that stuff, we'll understand what that is, and so we'll be able to tell whether or not this structure is, one of the big ones. And that will actually, if they can get the data down fast enough, and that's the biggest problem, is that they may not be able to. Notice Parker Solar Probe is almost completely on the other side of the Earth. Yeah. Other side of the sun from Earth, right? So we might not even see any of that data until after, this region is rotated into our view, and we can tell for ourselves what's going to happen. But nonetheless, it will be neat to see what this region is doing to us. And what is regarding the kill shot. Okay, so the sad thing is that some people would call this a kill shot. It's not. It's just a big solar storm launch. But there are quite a few people that have adopted that phrase. You'll see a lot of conspiracy theorists on YouTube and elsewhere that have adopted certain terms that are pet terms of maybe astronomers or astrophysicists when they're talking about stars and other, stars that are like 100 times the size of the sun, and really young and going through their adolescence and very upset with their appearance because they've got acne and hormones raging. Our star, as I've mentioned many times in the past, our star is a middle-aged star, right? And I've mentioned this before. All it wants to do is just drink its coffee and send the kids off to school. So it's quite well behaved.
I love the analogies. It's perfect. It's so easy to understand.
I understand this so much easier now.
Yeah,
exactly.
who wouldn't, right? And so for the astronomers to get super excited about these adolescent stars, with all their crazy risk taking and massive kill shots and massive mega flares and all this other kind of stuff, that's wonderful and fine. But don't apply that to our star, because then everybody runs with it, thinking that every little, whistle and bang from our star is a kill shot. So that's really what the kill shot is.
So like
You know.
somebody in the chat room said we dodged the banana, and so comparing those would be like comparing apples to bananas.
Right.
Stick
but
with the banana
Or oranges.
analogy.
Or
Well,
oranges
so
to
when do
bananas,
they get senior
because
citizen, like,
sun
and
is
they're like,
bright.
get off my lawn, and they bring out their shotgun? I mean, what do
Yeah.
we do then?
Well, that's when the star goes red giant and
Okay.
supernova.
We're
See,
we're
so
long
it's- I
gone
mean,
by then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, really, the lifetime of a star is very similar to us. I mean, in a sense, I mean, we're all made of star stuff, so it makes sense. I mean,
Sure.
if the adolescent stars are the crazy ones that let off all this space weather, middle-aged stars are very boring and they just like to read their newspapers, and old-age stars are the ones sitting on the the crazy ones sitting on their lawns with the guns.
Right
You
there.
know, then
Clint
that-
Eastwood in the movie.
Gran
yeah, exactly.
Torino.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
No
I
wonder
understand
we
it
are.
so much better now.
And really, it makes perfect
Strangely enough,
sense.
so do I.
See, this is why I appreciate you and Gordon West so much, because both of you have this. Josh talked earlier to Adam about having the knack, and both of you guys have the knack for explaining something that is really pretty doggone technical and turning it into what I refer to as bathroom language, where everybody can understand it.
Bathroom language.
Seriously.
Well,
That's one way. Okay,
And
Dr.
that's a gift. That's a gift.
Indeed.
It
Yes,
is. It
yes,
truly
I too
is.
have a potty mouth. We can celebrate the bathroom language.
Yes.
One other question. I'm going to interpret this question because I'm going to expand on it. But it says, does this cause earthquakes? But I'd like to know, does any of this stuff cause any of our crazy trauma here on Earth and all of our climate change kind of things? Is this what's making it happen?
Oh my goodness, boy! Talk about if you could get either of those questions answered in a robust and quantitative manner, you'd probably get the Nobel Prize. To be totally honest, the issue we have with space weather when it comes to either of those two things is that the space weather component. And some people will say there's no space weather component, and other people say space weather controls everything. And I believe that the true answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. The problem, however, is that the space weather component of things is not low-hanging fruit. In mainstream science and in geophysics and in climatology, there are still so many other questions that need to be answered quantitatively before we can add the complexity of space weather to the mix and be able to have a hope of being able to solve things. The issues with mainstream science is that, at least with earthquakes, the problem is earthquakes correlate with everything, and so it makes it extremely difficult to pick out really what is correlation. Correlation and causation are not the same thing. And so it becomes a real minefield trying to quantitatively and in a robust manner pick out whether or not this earthquake had anything to do with the space weather. Are there plausible mechanisms? Perhaps, and I won't dive into them now. But I mean, one of the ideas, of course, is if a solar storm, for example, can cause geomagnetically induced currents and cause grid problems with these really big storms, why couldn't they cause other anomalies in the ground? I mean, it's definitely electric and magnetic fields moving around in the ground. So there are mechanisms that are plausible. The problem is geophysicists are not even close to being able to ascertain those mechanisms at all. They can't even predict earthquakes just with the primary drivers, let alone these other smaller drivers. So it's that kind of subject is going to remain a fringe subject for possibly decades until basically geophysicists can get a better handle on what is going on with geophysics in of itself.
Amazing.
So I try to steer clear of that. And then a similar story can be said of climate change. Well, right. I mean, it's not my field, right? And a similar story can be said of climate change, because when it comes to climatology, there are so many connections. And I have quite a few colleagues who are looking deep or digging very deeply into the space weather connection, at least on a climatological scale. El Nino, La Nina, like the NCAR, UCAR group. It's great to watch them because they're terrestrial meteorologists and they're heliophysicists, space weather space meteorologists, if you want to call them that. A lot of them don't like that term, and they're literally sitting across the office, the hallway from each other. And so that is really where a lot of the synergy and a lot of the good research is being done. But once again, we have a lot of the same problems, is that there's so much more low-hanging fruit in looking at climate science and things that the scientists need to solve before we really pull in the space weather element on anything other than a rudimentary scale. But there are certain links, like for instance, a triggering of El Nino and La Nina that seems to be solar related and related to what we call the Schwab cycle here, which is on the 11-year cycle. We're actually seeing that, but there's lags, and so understanding that lag and why it's there and how long it takes both the neutral atmosphere and the charged atmosphere to respond, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
So
Well,
again, I try to stay out of it.
I hear you on that. So on a lighter note, Dr. T, we're coming up with how to watch your videos, and we did make it a drinking game. So every time,
Why have I not heard about this?
yes,
Or
us
me.
or the chat room, we have come up with a drinking game for you. And every time you say bang, 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 take a
right.
drink. Boom.
I take a drink, or you guys take a drink?
Bam.
Oh,
Everyone takes a drink.
Yes, everybody takes a drink or you take a shot. Trust me, this is a whole drinking game now. And I just
Thing.
wanted you to be aware of it. So,
oh, that's fantastic.
don't stack the cards or anything, but send me your text next time you send out your videos. No, it's really, it's so wonderful to watch you work. And I think that's what our viewers are trying to get at. And we can't wait to hear your bangs and booms and whams. And we
Right.
really appreciate them all.
We appreciate your enthusiasm about the subject, and the subject is so abstract that very few people can understand, other than, oh, I can see the sun today because there are no clouds. And so to have it explained in a way that we can kind of understand it and kind of grasp the
It's true.
mechanics of it, it's a gift, and we certainly appreciate you. So, and someone just popped up on the chat room. I'm in. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
I
love
mean,
it.
just like I just found out, the sun is like my parents sitting on their front deck having coffee. So,
Right.
It all makes sense.
everything for me. So
It does.
Right, Sam, leave me
It
alone.
does make sense.
But it's and then it's when this region 3181 rotates into view. Yeah, get ready. I mean, make sure you have enough alcohol in hand then, because if it turns, because this could be a machine gunner, so I'll be going, and
Oh, perfect.
I think that's an entire that must be a multi-pounder, two-fisted kind of thing.
That's a
beyond just
kegger.
a single wham. That's a
It's a
kegger.
kegger.
Right?
don't
Don't
use
hold
hard
it back.
alcohol with that one. Definitely bring the beer.
It's an intergalactic
That's great.
kegger.
Thank you
That's
so much,
great.
Dr. T. Anything else you want to tell us, Don? Any questions you have?
No, she's covered it. I'm just constantly in awe of
Me too.
of her and the knowledge and her, like I said, ability to explain it in a way that pretty much everybody can understand. And we're so fortunate to have you here with us and to have you as a ham radio operator as well. And it's very cool.
Very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
You guys
We
honor me.
appreciate
I
you.
appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
I
We could
enjoy
do a
everything.
whole show or a couple of hours just with you. And we may have to do that. That may be something we have to think about, just to have a Dr. T special one time and open it up to a ton of questions.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Thank you.
That would be
As
fun.
long as we do it when the space weather is light, we can do light stuff. But if it's ever a
Right.
sobering thing, saying let's do this when it's a big, scary event,
Yeah,
that's
we wouldn't
likely.
do that.
When I stop joking, that's when
Yeah.
you know something's
Yeah.
wrong. 'Cause I won't
Yeah.
be joking. If there's
Yeah,
a big
the
event.
poop
So
is
let's
going to
hope
hit the
that never
prop.
happens.
Exactly. Well, how was Christmas? First off, I'm sure your daughter raked in. How is she? And how old is she now? And I'm sure she had a great Christmas.
She is 13. She's 13.
Wow.
And she had a great Christmas. Yeah, she's.
She
and
was
she's,
so little when I saw her when you
can't
came to New Orleans.
No.
Oh my
no,
God.
she's 13 and she wants to be a game developer. She's on Oculus. She's doing graphic
Right
design.
on.
Nice.
Nice.
connecting
Nice.
it to Blender, connecting her new PC to Blender, and then design in VR and be able to see what she's designing on Blender, have it come to life, right, literally
Oh,
in her
that's so cool.
3D space. It's the sad thing is I'm the one who has to hook it all together, so it's like, oh, makes
Yeah.
me learn as much as she knows in order to do it. so
Exactly.
bit
That's
of a challenge.
so good. That is so cool.
she's
Well,
doing good.
all the best for the new year to you and your lovely family, and I can't wait to see you again sometime soon in person. Hopefully, it won't be too much longer from now. So
That'd be wonderful. I'm looking
awesome,
forward to it.
awesome. I see Gordo waving his hand. Gordo, you want to jump in here?
No, I'm just saying bye-bye, and Dr. T, keep up the great work.
Oh, thanks, Gordo. Much appreciated. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for having me on live.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
T.
you so much. There you go, Dr. Tamitha Skov. You want to follow her on Twitter at Tamitha Skov, of course, spaceweatherwoman.com, and the YouTube channel Tamitha Skov. And I still don't think she sleeps. I think she's constantly on Twitter telling you all about whatever is going on. So follow her. It's a great follow, and you will learn something every time she puts her fingers to the keyboard. Let's go ahead and get into the news of the week now from Amateur Radio Newsline. Thank you, Dr. T. From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2357, this is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. In one Canadian province, hams have noticed that the after effects of the past storm season haven't been all bad.
There are a lot of happy radio operators on Prince Edward Island lately. Hams in this province of Atlantic Canada have discovered their ranks are growing. According to a report by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Tropical Storm Fiona and the COVID-19 pandemic have created an environment that has led island residents to discover the appeal of radio communications. Prince Edward Island, also known among island chasers as IOTA number NA029, has become a place to nurture new amateurs, according to members of the Charlottetown Amateur Radio Club. The club's president, Bill McMaster, VY2WM, told the CBC that the group's membership has grown especially after amateur radio's profile grew during Tropical Storm Fiona this past September. At the time of the storm, local operators were helping with emergency response through the Can-Warn Emergency Communications Network, joining the ongoing nets, providing status reports and weather updates. Organizers told the CBC that the hams on the island expect to have another training program for licensed candidates by springtime. This is Sel Emby, KB3 TZD.
A proposal called the Amateur Radio Communications Improvement Act hopes to overhaul rules affecting data transmissions.
Saying that federal regulations need to keep pace with advances in amateur radio technology, a United States lawmaker has proposed updating rules governing data transmissions over the amateur bands. The proposed Amateur Radio Communications Improvement Act would eliminate the current symbol rate limits set by the FCC. The lawmaker, Debbie Lesko, an Arizona Republican, writes on her website that regulation of symbol rates has become outdated because newer technology permits the spectrum to handle greater amounts of data. The proposed update of the FCC rules removes the symbol rate limit and sets a 2.8 kilohertz bandwidth limit, which is already in place for amateurs using 60 meters. The ARRL previously pressed the FCC to remove HF symbol rate limits, claiming that, among other things, it was an obstacle to experimentation. Although the FCC has previously questioned the need for any bandwidth limit at all, the ARRL has said there is a need for such limits because digital protocols could be developed that have excessively wide bandwidths. The ARRL issued a statement saying the league hoped the FCC would remove the restriction on its own without waiting for the bill to be passed. This is Kent Peterson, KC0DGY.
Hams in the UK are being asked to contribute their ideas for radio's role in marking the King's coronation.
Long before there was radio, the UK had its fire beacons, torchlight relays that served as warnings of invasions in earlier centuries. As the Radio Society of Great Britain makes its plans to help mark the coronation of King Charles III and his Queen Consort next May, the Society hopes to give this ancient tradition a role as well. A number of events will be organised for the occasion with an eye towards demonstrating amateur radio to the public. The Society's coronation lead, Alan Messenger, G0TLK, is looking for ideas about what shape the special events will take, and most particularly how the fire beacons can be included as a way of honouring tradition. UK hams are being asked if they have suggestions for these events or any other thoughts to contact Alan at special.projects@rsgb.org.uk. This is Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Sel Lemby, KB3TZD, Kent Peterson, KC0DGY, Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wellbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.
And a big thanks to the Newsline crew for putting all that together for us. So we appreciate their efforts as well. And now another person who can take a very technical subject, such as building a radio from a kit and making it to where you can understand it and do it yourself. Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you to everybody. This has been a wonderful show this evening.
Yes.
And the lead up with K6ARK and his kits, I have not reviewed one of his kits yet in CQ, and I've got to do that because those antennas are wonderful. First off, I want to mention that we were going to have the ARL on talking about volunteers on the air, and that started on New Year's. And it'll be similar to the 100th anniversary of ARL in that we're going to have W1AW stroke whatever and RK stroke 0 on the air as well from different hams in the different states. And Nebraska is the first state that gets to do it. And we have it between January 11th and January 17th on Zulu time. And so I'm going to be one of the ones operating from Nebraska. I don't know exactly the shifts yet that I will have. That's coming shortly. But I will be one of the operators of W1AW stroke 0 here in Nebraska between the 11th and 17th. So you might by chance hear me on HF. Chances are probably 20 meters sideband and FT8 and maybe 40 and 15. So be listening, and maybe I'll get to work you during that, as well as the year-long event. I'm worth, as K0NEB, I'm worth 40 points as an assistant director, Midwest Division. All right. I'm going to put up some pictures. I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I put together for tonight. And first off, we're going to take a look at some 3D printing. As Adam pointed out earlier, 3D printing and ham radio go together well, and I've been doing lots of it. We were doing a dipole kit in Kansas in a couple of weeks from now that I'll be going down to Leavenworth, Kansas, about 2.5 hours away, and I'll be helping a group kit build. And the kit doesn't happen to have end insulators. So I decided, oh, well, I can print you some. So I took an existing design and shrunk it and strengthened it. And by golly, there it is. And I'm doing them kind of en masse there. And these are end insulators for dipoles. And that's one of the end insulators close up. You can see it's about 2 inches long. Real light, very, very strong. And I'm just using PLA. And that's going to be part of that kit. Now, he was showing a paddle. This is one that I printed. This was designed by, and I'm trying to remember his call. It's KB9RLW from the 4-state QRP group. And I'm going to have to print Andy's design as well and see how they compare because they're very similar. This is a CW iambic paddle, and that's what it looks like with the screws and contacts. The screws make up the contacts in this. And if you look on the back, you can see the same connector that he's using in his. You'll notice the slots also so that it can either be strapped on your leg or on your wrist. And I'm wearing it right now, and I'll show that after I'm done showing these pictures. But a little piece of Velcro, and I now have a wrist-mounted CW paddle, which is great for parks on the air and soda and things like that. It's very fast to print this one. It is on Thingiverse. And if you get on Thingiverse and look for wrist paddle, it comes up right away. And it prints very, very quickly and easily. So no problem at all. There are several little parts, but like I said, they're very small and they print very easily. And the cable you use is a simple 2-circuit stereo audio cable. This is a kit that's put out by the 4-state QRP group, and it is a simple CW code practice oscillator, including the straight key right on it. And this particular kit is going to be what I'm going to be doing 2 days before Hamcation. I will be in the Swaps building at 6 o'clock that Wednesday evening. So if you come to make a vacation out of Hamcation, you might want, after you get done with Disney on Wednesday, to come out there at 6 p.m. and be one of the 25 kit builders that's going to get a chance to build this nice code practice oscillator. And we're going to use that to teach some pretty good basic soldering and assembly skills. And you get a nice working device when you're done. It does not use the IC like the 555, so it has a nice sine wave audio output. Really, really, really sounds nice. It's a pair of 2N2222s. Very simple design and works quite well. And that's what the circuit boards look like before any of the parts are assembled on it. As you can see, it's really, really simple, runs on a 9-volt battery, and kind of a fun little kit. The kit is produced by the 4-state QRP group, and that's going to be what we're going to do in Florida. I'm going to close that and see if I get my ugly face back on here, and there we are. So 3D printing, as everybody has pointed out, is really vital, and I'm definitely going to look at printables and find his winders, because I did a large winder, and I need to make some smaller ones for this type of antenna, and like his design. So we're going to talk a little bit about, do a little like Tim Allen, who's also a ham, calls Tool Time, and we're going to talk about a few things. First off, when you're soldering, especially this time of the year, a lot of times we have to go outside because one of the facts of life living here in the Midwest is ice. And the area to the north of me had about a 1/4 inch of radial ice. And so there were some antennas that had some problems. Fortunately, we did not have that during this storm. And so what do you do when you want to solder an antenna wire outdoors? Excuse me. So your typical soldering irons that we use on our bench are not really appropriate for it. But you can get this one at Harbor Freight. This is a butane gas-powered iron, and it only costs about $22, which is pretty reasonable for these things. And it has the igniter in it. It's a like a piezo type igniter. And the reason you want to use one of these things is because it's powered by gas, not electricity. So the batteries are not affected by the, batteries are normally affected by the cold, but this is not. In fact, when you get a little light breeze or a little wind on there, it actually burns hotter. And so it's not going to be something that I'm going to use to build a kit with, but it's going to be something great to solder antenna wires, heavy duty copper and so on, because this can deliver a lot of heat. And when it's below zero and I got to get that 40-meter dipole back running, strip those leads, twist them together, and use this guy, and you're going to be back on the air. This is available at Harbor Freight, and these are about $22, and they are generally in stock. Now, a new tool that they came out with is this. This is a battery-powered soldering iron. It's great for use like in the car and stuff, and you're working on installing your HF antennas or battery cables or something for mobile installation. You don't want to string a wire in there. This is a battery-powered soldering iron. They call it a 4-volt lithium-ion soldering pen. and it's a little thick. The neat thing about it is it charges with USB-C.
Oh.
So like a cell phone charger will charge this. This is the first portable soldering rechargeable tool I've ever seen that uses your standard USB-C. Now, it's a little bit bigger and thicker and heavier than the wall one that I reviewed many years ago. And it also has an unusually large safety stand for it to keep from burning anything. But that's very useful because if you put one of these down on the carpet in your car or something, you definitely don't want to melt your carpet or so on. So the stand, of course, has no wiring or tip cleaner or anything on it. So you might want to use one of those brass type tip cleaners. And these are available for $39 at Harbor Freight. And like all Harbor Freight items in the previous item, you're not going to pay that. Last weekend, they had a 25% off everything coupon. And so that's when you're going to want to get it. So here's another tool. And this looks kind of like Jaws, okay? And what it is, I don't know if you can see, does that say? Yeah, it says Knipex. Knipex. It's a German tool, and I gave the links to this. You can get this at KC Tool, and what this is used for, it looks like Jaws, and it's used to strip enameled wire, like magnet wire on toroids and stuff, without melting things. And I just did it with this 24 gauge wire with this, and I don't know if you can see it, but it cleaned it off pretty nicely without using sandpaper or hot solder or anything. It actually works pretty good. Now, obviously, you're going to have different size jaws for different sizes of wire, and you can get the different jaws with it. And I think this was on sale for like 11 something at kctool.com. And they're really good to deal with, and you get it in the mail real quickly. And so in some of my kit building, I'm going to be using that more often to clean the wire before I tin it with the soldering iron. I always tin the wire for the ends of the toroids because you want to make sure that it makes really good contact on the top and bottom of the board.
Hey, Joe, what's the name of that tool? I know it's an enameled wire stripper, but it's a Knipex what?
Well, it doesn't have a name. It's got a number. And
okay,
the
great.
number is 1511120. And I think I gave the information in the chat. And it actually works pretty good, but you do have to change one of the jaws when you're doing thicker or thinner enameled wire. But it's kind of a neat extra tool. Now make sure you don't use the thinner jaws on thicker wire because it might cut it. So you got to use the right size tip. Now, finally, a lot of times we're at flea markets, and sometimes we come across treasures. And this one, I think I paid like $20 for it. And as you can see by the bag, it's a fluke, okay? And I found this a couple of years ago at one of the flea markets here. And it came out of an estate sale. And I said, well, can I turn it on? And I turned it on, and the LCD on it was missing segments, and they were kind of flickering and stuff. And I thought, oh, okay, it probably needs a new display. And I looked it up, and I found out online that 99% of the time it's not the display unless it's cracked. And what it is there's a rubber piece called an elastomer conductor. And what it's used for is to make the connection between the LCD and a circuit board. And so you have to take the old one out, and you use an alcohol swab to clean it up and make good contact. And then they have this different kind of a rubber elastomer conductor that makes those fine contacts between the LCD and the circuit board. And guess what? it lights up. Now you can get those elastomers and a whole kit and the instructions to do this if you go to the link that I gave you earlier, and I'm trying to think of what that was.
LCD
repair kit. And they have these for all these different fluke meters, and it's absolutely amazing. You can go all the way back to the 70 series, all the way up to the current 80s and so forth. And so this one, I paid $20 for the kit, and I think I paid like $20 for the meter, but it came with the plastic cover on it with the stand and the case and the probes and everything. And it looked like it hadn't been used much, but apparently that elastomer, the old style, seems to age and no longer makes good contact, and you can't really clean it. It's something else in there deteriorates. So the new elastomer and the cleaning kit and everything that comes with this kit for like $20 on eBay or through that website works wonderful. And so for $40, I ended up with a Fluke 79 Series 2, which really, really works well. And it's probably my best meter here besides the Fluke 8000, which sits on the bench. So I think we've gone through tool time and building the paddle, and that's what it looks like on my wrist. But I'm going to build his as well. I'm going to compare these because I have a 3D printer. Why not? I'll print his wire winder, and I will print his paddle, and I'm going to see which one is going to work better, because his also has the slots for the Velcro. Mm-hmm. And I found out that I could get like 75 feet of that Velcro, real Velcro brand stuff, for like $15 on Amazon. So I think I've worn it out. I think I've gone through a lot of stuff tonight, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer as well.
Oh, the only question I have, Joe, do you kind of have it in with CQ magazine and as well as the ARRL. Any word on if anybody's developing a book for 3D printing for ham radio enthusiasts?
Not yet, but in the new ARRL handbook, in my chapter, I had another author that did a subchapter within mine in the construction techniques, all about 3D printing and amateur radio.
Well,
so if you get the 100th anniversary ARRL handbook and you happen to see me at a Hamfest, I'd be glad to sign it.
I did a video. I've done a couple of videos on 3D printing. There's actually a question in the chat from Dennis is asking, what is a recommended 3D printer?
Great question.
The better, well, so I'll start with the cheaper ones. Everybody generally ends up with like an Ender 3. Those are pretty much
Which is what mine is, the 3 Pro.
And
one person said for a noob. For a noob.
For someone that
Ender
doesn't
3
want to spend a lot of
Pro,
money.
you're not going to spend a lot on it, and you'll learn all the basics, and then you'll learn what you want in a more expensive printer. But it's a great way to get started and a great way to learn 3D printing.
The advantage of the Ender is because it's so prolific, there are many parts available for the Ender that you can actually print on your Ender as replacement pieces or upgrade pieces, which is one of the best parts about 3D printing. If you have more money to spend, though, and you want kind of a printer that's just always going to be rock solid, the Prusa, the original Prusa i3s from Prusa, buy it from them. There are a ton of clones out there. The Prusa is really good.
Yeah, they're excellent printers, and those are printers that are actually made on 3D printers. The parts on the Prusas are actually 3D printed.
I had no idea.
Yeah, at one point, that was the whole concept of something going back to something called RepStrap, where you could actually build the printer using a printer to print the pieces for it. There are some pieces you can't print, like the nozzle and the heating elements and all that, but most of it you can do.
Use the printer to make the printer.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a lathe. Like you use a lathe to make another lathe. So I didn't see any other questions. Josh, did I miss any?
I think we got a lot of them. People were asking for links, and we're talking about the tools that Joe
okay.
mentioned, and I think you covered all the bases there, Joe, with mentioning Harbor Freight. I think, Amanda, your point was beautiful. Careful with giving your email to Harbor Freight because they will blow you up, man. You'll be getting emails. Oh, buddy.
Every day.
Yeah. So
same with Bath and Body Works. Different subject, but same thing. Just don't do it. Yes.
There's a DMR radio dealer that I get 4 or 5 a day as well. So
no, that's not okay. It's not okay. Stop doing that, you guys. It just makes us hate you. All right, I think we're done. Joe,
I think
thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Man, what a great show. Thanks so much, everybody, who are watching. If you want to catch the next episode, which will be in 2 weeks, make sure you hit subscribe and click that bell. We got already packed for next week. We've got a bunch of guests lined up. It's going to be a great show. We're going to talk about volunteers on the air and explain what all of that is. We've been talking about for a couple of weeks. Amanda, you want to mention the nets? If they're still going?
Yes. So if they started going, okay, 14 Charlie for D-Star for sure. I know that's going on, and they're probably about ready to go take a nap. But also 7192 for 40 meters, and I have not seen Steve say that he has gone to 80 meters yet. So look at 14,268, I believe, is where he operates at. So there we have it.
All right. Well,
thank you, everyone.
Yes, indeed. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks so much for watching. 73, everybody.
73.
Well, now I got to go get that external antenna tuner that Gordo mentioned, the SG.
So you just spend money every time.
I got to go get anything USB-C I'm addicted to. So I got to go get a USB-C rechargeable soldering pencil. And I got to go print all of Adam's printables that I don't have yet. So, wow, what a show for me.
And
thanks, everybody.
we all get to go sit on our porch and drink coffee and shoot at the moon.
Wait for the kill shot.